Okay. We're in the midst of learning the Masechta Shvius, Perek Zayin, Mishnah Aleph, and we explained that there are different categories like human consumption and animal fodder that is a din of Shvius on. Different classifications. Not only is there Shvius on the actual item, but even if you exchange it and quote unquote you redeem it for something else, both items have halachos of Shvius. And we went through that. Now the Mishnah goes on and continues and says, Yesh lo bia u'ledam of bia. Meaning not with there's a din of beer. We already said you have normally when we talk about beer, we talk about bidui, which you have in Parshas Kisavoy. In Parshas Kisavoy, it says Biati HaKodesh min Abayis, and we're talking over there about Trumas and Maasros. So you have those 3-year cycles. During the 4th year before Pesach, you have a din of beer. Same thing at the 7th year. For the next 3 years, not talking about Shvius, this didn't be it. And you have to be Mavayir it. Take care of business and make sure it's no longer around. Over here, by Shvius, there's also a din of beer. What beer is, we'll explain shortly. It's a little bit different than the beer of Trumas and Maasros. And Yesh lo beer u'ledam of beer. So what does that mean? Climate. We mentioned the 3 categories, be it human consumption, animal fodder, or something like a dye. And they will not stay in the ground. We already explained those parameters. Is a halacha of beer. Now, beer, normally when you talk about beer, you talk about, where do we talk about beer all the time? Where do we mention beer? What? Beer chametz. We're not talking about burning something up over here. It's a completely different connotation. The hainu chayovim leitziyim ha'bayis. You're obligated to take it out of the house, ulafkiroi, and to basically be mafkirit, abandon it. When the time comes for this type of a species not to be in the fields anymore, and you can't find, animals can't find it readily. Now, okay. Chiyuv beer nilmin na'posik. How do you know there's a concept of beer? Because it's a famous posik in Parshas Bahar. Ulehemtecho, ulechaya asher ba'atzecho, tia kol atvos ulecho. So what are we talking about? The chaya all of a sudden. The chaya has a mitzvah of Shvius. All of a sudden, what brings this up? But upirshu chazal shekavon is ha'kosiv. What the Torah wants to tell us is shekol zman shechaya echelus v'minzeh b'soda. As long as the chaya can eat from this type of an item, atu yishor lechol masha b'bayis. You're allowed to eat it. Avol nirkav masha nisha b'soda. But let's say what was left over in the field, even if it was there, would be spoiled and it wouldn't be used for an animal consumption even. You have to get rid of it from the house. Over here, the beer means, in the connotation, that you have to get rid of it from the house. and this is a Gemara in Psachim, and a Torah's Kahanim. What the different scenarios of beer is, we'll be seeing Me'at Hashem in Perites. Now, we gave over now a very nice translation, but there's one difficulty with this. We can understand what we're talking about. This is a man of beer when it's called l'chayis ben asoda vis-a-vis human consumption, because the animal doesn't eat it anymore, or be it for animal fodder, because the wild animals don't have it in the field. But we said there's a third category. What's the third category? Dying. What over there were we talking about? That the animal won't be able to dye his coat? What are we talking about over here? Regarding this question, it's a whole question which we're going to have at the end of the Mishnah, the following Mishnah. Meaning, we haven't spoken about a scenario where you're using it for dyes. Dyes doesn't make sense. What's the litmus test? That you're going to go ahead and see if the animal can eat it. Mine is shmita leitz lahasina, like they say. Right? We'll see. But not only is there a din of beer when we're talking about a circumstance of the actual produce, but if you exchange it for money, on the money you exchange, we said this chala kedusha of shvius has the sanctity of shvius, and therefore the halacha will be that there's also a din of beer on that. Meaning, they also get this chalois and shvius shel haperis, ulechein chayovim bebeer k'may haperis hatzma. They get a din of beer as if it's the peris. Meaning, Kigoin, for example, let's say you had a big pomegranate orchard. What do you make on pomegranates? It by pre-eggs, right? It's not a watermelon. It's a pomegranate. And now the kibbutz to a roasting dog. And someone came to you and said, Reb Yankel, you know those pomegranates are beautiful. I want to have some. And you don't have to worry about it. I'm giving you money, even though it's shvius. So he kept his mouth shut. Why not get some money for it? So the halacha is kasher kol hurimonim me'etzim shebasoda. When there's no longer pomegranates in the fields, then why the animals can't grab it? Chayiv hu lahoitzi is the mea rimonim in avais. You have to get rid of that also. You basically have to be mafker it. You have to abandon it. Okay. That ends this part of the Mishnah. Now, we said that as it has to be a type of produce that eventually does not last in the ground. So what exactly, now the Mishnah is going to go ahead and spell out what type of produce are we talking about over here. So what are they? What type of a food item is not going to last in the ground? It's the type of a leaf of onions. That's a type. It's called the shaita. You know a shaita, what a shaita is? It's a wild, or normally you say a shaita is technically, the translation for a shaita in English is
idiot.
You call it an idiot, you call it an imbecile. Yeah, there are different translations for it. Take out your thesaurus. What? I don't hear what you said. A hadashaita also you have. Does anybody know what a hadashaita is?
Myrtle?
A myrtle is right, hada, so why is it called a shaita?
Not good for sukkahs?
Why is it no good for sukkahs? When do we have it? Of course, you can use it. Let's say I use hadashaitas during sukkahs.
Really?
Yeah. At Friday night we make a bar mitzvah psamim. So I make on a hadashaita because those I can't put onto my lulav. Therefore, I tell them those that we can't use for the lulav we'll use to make a bar mitzvah psamim on Shabbos. So you want to use it for malav malkin, right? But why is it called the hadashaita? The reason is because if you learn the halachas of hadis is not so simple. You can get an esrog that's worth $1,000, right? And you get a lulav that's worth $500 because it's the perfection. And you get your aravis from the shutza aravis. But then you get hadassim that are hadashaita. You have a problem with your lulav and esrog set. It has to be mishaloshim.
Three sets
of three. So if it's not sets of three, it's let's say 2 and 1. You have sometimes you see that 2 and 1. It's a hadashaita. So over here also there's something that's called a lufa shaita. This type of a strange type of onion. The alei hadanana, and a type of a leaf that comes from a mint. Olshin. An olshin is a famous type of vegetation. Green. When do we have the halacha of olshin? We spoke about sukkis. Now we're going to be mentioning when do you have olshin? Does anybody know? Olshin are endives. One of the 5 types of species that you use for mara are olshin. Yeah. We use
romaine hearts.
We use romaine lettuce, right? Or you use what's called horseradish. But there's something that's even better than horseradish. It's called olshin, endives. You have to be careful with the endives. Why? Because endives is problematic if it's water. What is it called? Water based. It has to be
hydroponic.
It's hydroponic, exactly. If it's hydroponic, it becomes problematic.
Then it's a
so we're not talking over here about that question here. That's for the 5 type of species for mara. Creation, and also creation. What is creation? This is already Rosh Hashanah type of a talk. Creation are, see, we talk about Sukkot, we spoke about Pesach, and now we're speaking about Rosh Hashanah. Creation are karsim, are leeks. And also vaharigila, a type of vegetation that's called regila. And the way the Mefarshim explained it is that it's a type of min yerik ra. It's a type of bitter herb. No, we said regila is a galgulis. How do you say it? Ramayel, do you have an answer?
Gargulis?
Yeah, it's called. It's a type of not bitter. It's a type of produce. And then you have what's called v'neitz hacholov, a type of produce that is what?
A type of cabbage.
A cabbage? That's what he calls it. Huh? Bretzeli krop, okay. Type of cabbage.
I'm not saying it's cabbage, that's the fact that it ends with krop.
Okay.
It's one word.
The Neitz HaCholov. The Neitz HaCholov is a type of white type of flour that is used also in a salad. It's also considered from Shvius. Right now, before we were giving general guidelines, now it talks about a whole different types of different species that go under these general guidelines. We'll go into one more, because umachul behema and any type of animal fodder. Till now, these items previously were used in salads, like we do. We make a vegetable salad, lettuce salad. They're not so roy, but they're good enough to be considered something that is used for human consumption. Now, let's see how he describes these species. The Eza. What's called for human consumption? Or fodder, or something that you might use as a dye, and it will not last on the ground. What is going on over here? So he explains. The Mishnah is first going to take into account what type of species are we talking about that go under this generalization, this general rule. Even though technically people don't eat it so often, meaning it's not what you call a regular edible food. Since sometimes you will go and use it in a salad, let's say, for all intents and purposes, we consider this human for human consumption. And we place it under the category of shvius for a person. The culture meaning are going to have for sure items, apples and oranges, for sure it's going to be considered. Could go into grains, berries, different types of fruits, yerokos, or vegetables, carrots, peas. Also, we consider it under the classification of the sanctity of shvius of a person's consumption. And if it's something that will not go through, stay intact in the earth, we consider it shvius. And there's a din of beer. The same thing when it comes to animal fodder and dyes, which we'll see shortly. They're not items that you normally would use. Still, sometimes you use it under certain circumstances. It might be quote unquote dire circumstances. It's enough to be under the category to create that it's considered animal fodder or dyes, and is a kedusha speech. The kochkin hamina for sure. If it's something that you always use as a dye, or you always use for human fodder, it would also be considered kedusha shvius. And he goes through these different items that you would say is on the borderline. What are they? The first one is what we call that type of onion that's ale haluf hashoita. So what does that mean exactly? So it's not so simple, like it's not as simple Simon says over here. Ale aluf hashoita. What is ale aluf hashoita? Aluf hu mimina betza. It's a type of onion. It's from the onion family. Yeshvim luf hanikra luf shoita, and there's a type of luf that's called shoita. Luf zed doimer luf ragel. It looks like a regular onion. Avol olive rechavim yoiser. The way the Rav Haigoin explains it in Masechta Uksin it has a wider leaf. V'nikru shaita, why is it called a shaita? Abnormal. Mishum shekol davar she'eini k'may sheroy liyus. Anything that is not in the normal range, nikru shaita, it's called a shaita. And his Taka says, the Vilna Goyen Shloisel Yo says that you want to know something comparable to a luf hashoita, it's the hod hashoita. The hod that is a shoita. Why was this brought down? Because a lot of times a human being will not eat it. Because once in a while, when you're in dire circumstances and you're ravished and you're hungry, you will eat it. Also, it's not something that is sweet. You have these type of onions that are sweet. What are they called? Those purple onions?
Vidalia?
Oh, Vidalia onions. So that we're not talking about over here. Vidalia with a V?
Yeah.
Yeah, with a V. Vidalia onions. That's a sweet onion. You can eat it practically. Usually people don't eat onions raw. But people will take an onion if you have it in a salad, whatever, and take it along because it has a certain sweetness to it. This is completely bitter. The normal way how you eat this is that you sweeten it by going ahead and pikvisha. How is pikvisha in English? Soaking it, huh? Pickling it. It's not technically ready to be sweetened. Even after you sweeten it by pickling it, it's not considered what you call a how would you say, something that's a special type of food item. It's not a connoisseur type of item. Mishum kach omer ameres hamishna b'be'uksin she'nechshav oichel inyan tumas oichel ashim tekenu. Under normal circumstances, we know that in order, this has to be understood, in order for something to be mekabel tumas oichel, there's a halach of tumas oichel. We're not talking about tumah chamura here. We're talking about a regular tumas oichel. How does it get a tumas oichel? It becomes muksha to be mekabel tumah. Let's say a produce. How? Because it's become muksha from the shivas mashkin. Yeah, right. Sheva mashkin. Yad shochadam. Right. That's a simon. Correct. Afterwards, if it's something that's edible, it has to be roy lachilas adam. If it's not roy lachilas adam, it will not be considered an oichel that is mekabel tumas oichel. We're not talking about a tumah chamura here. Then it has to be something that's if it's not roy lachilas kelev. We're not going into that right now. So the halacha is that in the Masechta Uksin it says that these type of bitter onions are not choshev to be considered a machal not considered to be a machal to be mekabel tumah unless you sweetened it prior. It became in the shvius, even so for shvius, nechshiv machal odem hol pom nechal even before you sweetened it, it's considered. So basically, this is a two-tier policy over here. Legabe the halacha, you have this type of onion. Legabe the halacha of tumas oichel, it's not mekabel tumas oichel. On the other hand, we still say it's mekabel tumas. It has a kedusha shvius. So you burn the candle at both ends. V'chol of kedusha shvius miyad b'shas kedula. V'afal pisha dayin like miska, even though you did not yet sweeten it. Avol ala shaluf ragel. Let's say you have a regular onion. What does it mean you have a regular onion? Luf pikeach, he calls it. You know what a pikeach is? Jonathan, what's a pikeach? Someone says someone's a pikeach. Oh, there's a pikeach. What is smart? If you have a normal luf that's smart, meaning it's not a luf shoulder, but it's a luf pikeach. It's needless to say that it's going to be Mikabel Tumah Shvius. And he continues and says, even though we know onions last a long time, it will not last in the good earth. If it gets ruined during the winter season. But this is all talking about the leaf, the olive, the leaf of the onion. However, the actual bulb of the onion or the root of the onion never gets ruined. We know. It stays in the ground and it doesn't get ruined. So what we're talking about over here is the leaves. Let's continue and mention tomorrow. Nani ben Akash and Baruch Dr. Yisrael. Lefikach, careful to have. Shinema Adoyne Chofetz, Leman Tzidkoi, Yagdul Toiro, Viyadir.